So, hi everybody. Our challenge for today, or the topic that we've chosen, is the tokenism at Goldman Sachs. So, Goldman Sachs is the second largest investment bank and financial services company in the world. It has about 46,000 employees as of 2023. And it has a global presence. But um, in spite of all of these accomplishments that Goldman Sachs has in terms of a diverse employee base, Goldman Sachs has been publicly accused of a lot of discrimination and diversity issues. They were very recently in the news for a gender bias lawsuit that they settled for a racial injustice lawsuit. And in response to all of these things, Goldman Sachs announced a series of diversity initiatives um, that seemed like a very performative effort to address the PR backlash, but it truly lacked impact in terms of what it could have done in terms of being an inclusive employer. And thereby, what we've decided is to pitch to the Goldman Sachs executive board as to how they could potentially address this challenge.
Next slide.
Yep, over to you, Miles.
So our recommendation to Goldman Sachs, having done some thorough analysis on this problem and looking at what other organizations have done to really implement effective cultural change rather than just, compositional change and actions that can really come across as tokenism rather than, a true understanding and commitment to addressing, DEIB issues in the workplace, is that rather than just throwing money arbitrarily at the problem or simply setting sort of quantitative diversity targets that can easily promote tokenism rather than actual organizational change, we recommend implementing a continuous improvement process that we show here on this slide, which we're confident will more effectively foster a culture of DEIB at Goldman. The first step of this process is what? To truly understand the problem underlying these DEIB issues. I think the first step, just like in AA, is to admit you have a problem. And I think that is the true first step. Next is the why. Once you understand that there is a problem, you really need to gain buy-in from the leadership. Why is this an issue that we care about? Why should we invest this time, money, and effort into addressing these issues, really selling them on the value of DEIB? Next is where. Where are they at currently? So this is a holistic assessment of their current, not just their current composition, but the current practices across the organization that may be preventing DEIB from truly seeping through the entire organization. Next is the how. Once they understand where they're at, they can focus on implementing process improvements that should better promote DEIB. We'll get into some of those in the following slides. And finally, Kaizen, essentially doing continuous feedback so that you can understand which of those initiatives, which of those process improvements are actually working, which are not working, and how do you tweak those moving forward to continue working towards the goals. And importantly, you loop back around to, once again, what are the problems that are arising with these new initiatives, and restarting that process rather than having it be a short-term initiative, really shifting it to a long-term strategy, a long-term cultural shift. We're confident that with this shift, it'll be a focus positively away from company composition to company culture of DEIB, and then Goldman can start to reap the benefits of those changes. With that, we'll start to get into some more details of these steps.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Next slide. So leaders, they often respond well to compelling business cases, data-driven insights, and an action plan that aligns with both their values and organizational goals. Here is how you can understand the problem and secure the buy-in. Firstly, Frame the conversation in terms of business outcomes, as leadership is typically focused on organizational performance. To get the buy-in, connect the DIB initiatives to key business metrics, like, firstly, improved innovation. A diverse team brings a variety of perspectives that can drive innovation and problem solving. Secondly, talent acquisition and retention. Companies with strong DIB culture attract top talent and have a high retention rate. Thirdly, market competitiveness. Organizations that prioritize DIB are often seen as more attractive by customers, investors, and stakeholders. Fourthly, address how tokenism can lead to lack of trust, legal risks, reputational damage, and missed opportunities for growth. Secondly, leaders respond well to data-driven insights that can reveal the current state of diversity and inclusion in your organization. Employee surveys is a good way to include questions around tokenism, representation, and whether employees feel they truly belong. Retention and engagement data show how marginalized groups may be leaving at higher rates due to lack of inclusion. External benchmarking, compare your organization to industry standards or competitors to highlight gaps. Fourthly, showcase the missed opportunities in market cap. Third, educate leadership on consequences of tokenism, which often leads to employee dissatisfaction, disengagement, and burnout. Tokenism can make people feel like they're being used for their demographic traits rather than valued for the skills and contribution, which can in turn lower their morale. Burnout. Diverse employees who are treated as tokens may be expected to represent the entire group, leading to added stress and burnout. Employees will talk, and companies known for tokenism can exhibit negative publicity, damaging the brand and ability to recruit top talent. Last but not the least, frame DIB as a long-term strategy rather than a short-term initiative. Leadership needs to understand that avoiding tokenism requires continuous commitment and action. Creating a culture of belonging requires shifting mindsets and behaviors across all levels of organization. Secondly, leadership must address underlying systems and structures that perpetuate inequities in hiring practices, promotional pipelines, and mentorship programs. I'll pass the ball on to Sangwa for the next slide.
Next, as part of step 3, we need to conduct a more detailed and precise evaluation of the current status and business plan. The first priority will be an organizational assessment, which can be approached through the following actions, such as conducting internal surveys to pinpoint areas where tokenism may be occurring, or auditing existing policies to ensure they don't accidentally reinforce tokenism, and analyzing feedback from exit and stay interviews to identify whether employees from marginalized group feels undervalued or excluded. Additionally, we should focus on auditing the current DEIB infrastructures as well. It will be addressed by assessing the effectiveness of the existing DEIB framework and reviewing training programs related to leadership, unconscious bias, and cultural competence. Yeah.
Right. So to move on to the next step of our plan, Goldman Sachs can take concrete steps to revamp their recruiting practices and create a focus on authentic inclusion. So in terms of revamping recruitment practices, they should review and update their job descriptions so that the language does not preclude certain groups from applying to positions. They should also emphasize skills and competencies over specific experience requirements in the descriptions. They should also create a focus on broadening candidate sourcing by expanding recruitment channels beyond the traditional ones to specialized job boards that can reach a wider range of candidates. They should also participate in targeted career fairs and networking events for underrepresented groups. Another thing they can do is establish bias-free screening through blind resume review processes that mitigate unconscious bias. They can also create standardized screening criteria and conduct skill-based assessments for objectivity in hiring. They should also enhance their interview process by using diverse interview panels and develop a standardized assessment criteria. To focus on authentic inclusion, They can integrate open dialogue and respect for different viewpoints into the company ethos. They should also prioritize meaningful representation and allyship in the company. They should develop comprehensive support systems such as mentorship and sponsorship programs for employees from underrepresented groups, ensure that employee resource groups have enough funding to support diverse employees, and provide access to development opportunities equally for all groups. They should also engage in providing ongoing education and training to facilitate cultural intelligence and implement unconscious bias trainings as well. They should also create inclusive policies and benefits, such as offering flexible work arrangements to accommodate diverse needs and provide comprehensive health benefits that can cover diverse family structures. I'll pass it on to Shal to continue.
Actually, I think I'm taking this one. The last step of the process here is really essential. Once you implement these new processes and procedures, which you hope will advance you towards your DEIB goals, you really need to track your progress and implement a continuous mindset, essentially a Kaizen process, just like you would to your operations, right? And this takes on both a qualitative, crucially, and a quantitative approach. On the qualitative side, it's really important that you regularly conduct anonymous employee surveys and truly through those surveys, try and structure them in a way where you can gauge how your employees from diverse backgrounds are they feeling empowered. And as you start to implement some of these processes, hopefully they'll start to feel more included, more empowered in their roles, and like their ability to advance up through the ranks organically, rather than just being, tokenistically placed into a role. You can track that through these types of qualitative surveys. On the quantitative side, yes, you can continue to hire, analyze your hiring data, look at your retention rates in particular, and the career progression, across different groups. So you can track these things quantitatively, but in particular, the qualitative surveys will really help you to get a feel for not just the composition of your organization, but the culture within your organization. Have some interviews, some more in-depth interviews with particular employees who are open to sharing their perspectives. This will help you to assess the influence of these diverse voices as far as do they feel heard when it comes to the decision-making processes. Transparency. So, to be truly accountable, you need to have transparency, not only necessarily with your employees, but perhaps publicly. And that accountability will help drive the progress you're hoping to see. Meanwhile, check in. What are our competitors doing, right? What are our counterparts doing? What are our customers doing that we can sort of see as best practices that are showing results? And that might help us to give us new ideas what we can implement next as far as our DIB practices. So through this process of tracking progress of and implementing new changes, this Kaizen continuous improvement should help us maintain it as a mindset rather than as an initiative.
Okay, so you heard from all of my teammates thus far about what steps Goldman Sachs can take. But I just want to sum it up and just state that DEIB, it cannot be a destination. It has to be a journey. And just like any other best operational practices, DEIB has to be practiced consistently. It has to be consistently practiced top down and has to be embraced in terms of the language that the management uses, in terms of hiring, in terms of engagement, in terms of retention. It involves giving everyone a seat at the table, and it involves listening to all voices. It has to be a long-term strategy, and it cannot be a short-term or a medium-term fad. Thank you.